Today, we're diving into the history of Turkmenistan, a nation with a story that is just wild. It's gone from being this vibrant heart of ancient empires to one of the most isolated and frankly weirdest countries on Earth. It's a tale of conquest, total transformation, and some really extraordinary personalities. So let's get into it.
We're going to break this down into 6 key chapters. We'll start with its ancient beginnings as a global crossroads, then move through the Turkic and Mongol invasions that completely reshaped its identity. After that, we'll look at the Russian and Soviet eras that drew its modern borders, and finally, we'll unpack the bizarre and dynastic path it's taken since independence.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning, thousands of years ago. You have to picture this land not as a settled nation, but as this grand corridor, a highway for nomadic peoples and conquering armies. It was a really critical piece of a much larger Eurasian puzzle.
Power here was constantly changing hands. The story really kicks off around 2000 BC with the arrival of nomadic Iranian tribes, people like the Scythians. Then come the big players. The Persian Empire rolls in and absorbs the territory. Then Alexander the Great marches through, and he leaves his mark by founding the city of Merv. A little later, the Parthians, another powerful group, even set up their capital at Nisa, which is super close to modern-day Ashgabat.
So, what was life actually like back then? Well, the population was mostly Iranian, and the main religions were Zoroastrianism and Buddhism. But economically, this region was an absolute powerhouse. Merv became this huge center for silk production, and the entire area was a vital link on the Silk Road, connecting China with the great cities of the Middle East. It was truly a global crossroads.
But of course, that era of prosperity was about to be completely turned on its head. The next period saw 2 monumental invasions that didn't just conquer the land, they fundamentally remade its soul, permanently changing its culture, its language, and its faith.
And this transformation was just profound. First, Arab armies swept through in the 8th century, and they brought Islam with them, which slowly replaced the older faiths. Then, not long after, Turkic-speaking Oghuz tribes migrated down from the north. The combination of these 2 events was a complete cultural reset. The region shifted from its Iranian roots to a brand new identity, one built on a Turkic language and the Islamic faith.
And this, right here, is where we get the name Turkmen. The term first popped up in the 10th century, specifically to identify these Oghuz tribes who had moved south and embraced Islam. The name itself is thought to mean something like pure Turk or most Turk-like, marking the birth of this new identity that blended Turkic heritage with Islamic belief.
Now, under the rule of one of these Turkic groups, the Seljuks, the city of Merv entered an incredible golden age. It wasn't just a trading hub anymore. It became a great school of learning, a major center for science, scholarship, and culture within the Islamic world. It even served as a capital for the powerful Seljuk Empire.
Well, that golden age, it came to a brutal, abrupt end. The next era was one of just sheer devastation, followed by a period where, from the absolute ashes of empire, the modern Turkmen tribal identity really started to take shape.
In 1221, the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, just came crashing through Central Asia. The invasion was catastrophic. They completely destroyed the city of Merv, burned it to the ground, and massacred its people. This one event basically ended the region's urban golden age and just wiped out centuries of development.
So, in the power vacuum left behind when the Mongol and Timurid empires eventually faded, a whole new social structure emerged. The surviving Turkmen didn't rebuild the great cities. Instead, they organized themselves around powerful tribal chiefs. This is when the old confederation splintered, giving rise to the major tribal groups we know today, like the Teke and the Yomud, whose identities are still central to Turkmenistan.
Okay, let's jump forward a few centuries to the 1800s and the arrival of a new imperial power from the north, Russia. This marks the beginning of another radical transformation and the creation of Turkmenistan as we kind of know it today.
So why did the Russians march south? Well, their official justification, the reason they gave, was to put an end to the Turkmen-led slave raids and banditry that were causing chaos in the region. Whether that was just a pretext or the real motive, it gave them the rationale they needed for a full-scale military conquest.
The conquest was sealed at the absolutely brutal Battle of Göktepe in 1881. After that, Russia cemented its control. They built the Trans-Caspian Railway, they set up new administrative centers like Ashgabat, and they formally annexed the whole territory into the Russian Empire, calling it part of Russian Turkestan.
After the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks redrew the entire map of Central Asia.
And for Turkmenistan, the pivotal year was 1924. That's when they created the Turkmen Soviet Socialist Republic. And this is a huge deal, because for the very first time, Turkmenistan existed as a distinct political entity with the borders that we recognize today.
And wow, did the Soviet era bring changes. It was another complete overhaul of society. The traditional Islamic, nomadic, tribal way of life was just forcibly replaced. The Soviets imposed this industrialized, urban, socialist model. They collectivized agriculture, and they reoriented the entire economy around one thing: massive cotton production. This cotton-first policy, by the way, led to one of the worst man-made ecological disasters of the 20th century, the draining of the Aral Sea.
So then, the Soviet Union collapses in 1991, and Turkmenistan gets its independence. But it didn't move towards democracy. Oh no! Instead, it entered this bizarre new era defined by one man, its eccentric and deeply authoritarian first president, Saparmurat Niyazov.
Niyazov, who had been the head of the local Communist Party, very quickly consolidated absolute power. He gave himself the title Turkmenibashi, which means leader of all Turkmen, and then had the constitution changed to make himself president for life.
And under his rule, Turkmenistan became one of the strangest and most isolated dictatorships on the planet. He built this massive cult of personality around himself. He made his own spiritual book, the Ruhnama, mandatory reading in all schools. He famously renamed the months of the year, one after himself, another after his mother. All opposition was crushed, and the country just sealed itself off from the rest of the world.
Turkmenbashi's sudden death in 2006 opened a new chapter. And while some of his most out-there policies were rolled back, the system of absolute rule stayed put, eventually leading to what is basically a political dynasty.
His successor, Gurbanguly Berdimuhammedov, started to undo some of the weirdest policies. He dialed back the overt personality cult, he restored the traditional names of the months, and he reinstated pensions that Niyazov had cut. But while those changes were definitely noticeable, the underlying system of absolute control, that didn't change one bit. And you can see the new reality in the line of succession. After ruling for 15 years, Berdimuhamedov stepped down in 2022. And who replaced him? His own son, Sardar, in a tightly controlled election. This father-to-son transfer of power effectively created a modern political dynasty, cementing the family's grip on the nation.
Which leaves us with a final question. Turkmenistan's history is just one of these extraordinary shifts, from being a central point of connection for the ancient world to becoming one of its most disconnected states. So you have to wonder, how will this long and complex legacy of empires, tribes, and authoritarian rulers shape what comes next for the country?
Hey, if you found this journey through Turkmenistan's history fascinating, you should check out the other explainers in our Quick Country Histories playlist. And for more deep dives that help unravel the world, make sure you subscribe to Notebook Summaries. Thanks for watching.